In Texas, there is no bigger community activity than high school football.
Greg was one of the best players.
The momentum he had is unlike most students ever experience.
I got a text message with Greg Kelly's photo, and it just said, "Do you know this kid?"
There was a crime committed, according to this 4-year-old boy.
I just turned numb. Like, this can't be true, this can't be true.
And that's when a second victim came forward.
The jury found the defendant guilty.
This trial was a sham.
Everyone's saying you got the wrong guy.
Mr. Kelly has lied.
Did you take a lie detector test?
Passed every question but one.
We've been on this journey to figure out what the truth is, and it's proven difficult at every turn.
Initially, I was pretty convinced of his innocence. Now I wouldn't be surprised either way.
A gentleman who's got his back up against the wall lost his title, by the way, in the co-main event when he fought Alexander Volkanovski the last time Kamaru Usman was headlining a card at UFC 245. Max Holloway takes on Alexander Volkanovski for the second time, and he did an interview recently, BC, with Ariel Helwani on ESPN, and what he said was, listen, the quarantine in Hawaii was no joke. If they found you in the gym, they would arrest you. He didn't spar for this fight. He trained, obviously, but he hadn't seen his coaches. The first time he saw his coaches was when he went to the airport to leave to go to Abu Dhabi. He trained over Zoom. BC, I have to ask you, should he have taken this fight?
Again, he's one of those guys, right? I mentioned Masvidal thrives in chaos. I'm done betting against Max Holloway, Luke. I'm done. I've done it so many times. I actually talked to him yesterday for an interview that'll run on the CBS Sports State of Combat podcast this week. And spoiler alert, here's the interview. Here's his answers. It is what it is. 11th Island, baby. A magician never tells his tricks. I'm a fighter at my heart. It is what it is. Oh, and an 11th Island shout out as well. So this is an incredible poker face because he told me the same things. Look, I trained over Zoom. I didn't spar, blah, blah, blah. But he also very subtly, and I'm sure there's jet lag and a lot of that going into it, was just like, look, man, I could lose 5 times in a row to Volkanovski. My legacy is set. I have no pressure. And Luke, I think to a large degree, while we know that's his default personality, so I'm less inclined to worry about him, I think he's also, playing poker with us. I think he's also coming in here like, yeah, whatever, man, no pressure. And I also think he's going to take back his championship, Luke, because if there was ever a time to count him out, it was that crazy year. What was it, 2018, when he had to pull out of 2 straight fights and the weight issues and that random Michael Bisping interview that we thought, like, does he have, early onset problems? Does he need to get out of this sport? What the hell's going on? But what did he do after that, Luke? He went into war with Ortega and came out shining. Every time I think, like, maybe the damage is caught up to him early, all this other stuff. Look, he just kicks that door down and shows you he is an all-time great. You're watching a guy author an all-time great resume. Is there more pressure on him right now to keep that going in that direction? Yes. You don't want, look, historically, boxing and MMA at the highest levels, you lose twice in a row to the same guy on the title level. You tend to not be the same to some degree after that. But Luke, that first fight was not Max. Volkanovski put out an incredible game plan. He disarmed him. Yet Max rallied in the final 2 rounds and made it pretty damn close. I just don't know, Luke. I love Volkanovski. I love City Kickboxing. I love what you do for me here, sir. But at the end of the day, can you do that twice to a fighter as great as Max Holloway? Because I went back and rewatched that first one. Remember what he said in the post-fight interview? He said, look, guys, I'm 28. I'm young. I'm still learning. I'm going to be back. And I tend to believe that, Luke. He's got the length. He's got the ability to both lead off the combinations and finish them with big blows. He got confused. He got outworked. He got outsolved in the first 3 rounds of their first fight against a great fighter. But show me you can do that twice. Show me you can do that for 10 rounds. I don't know, dude. I'm telling you right now, there are rare species in this game. Masvidal's one of them. Holloway's another one. They're just fighters, Luke. It doesn't matter. They could fight on the plane on the way over, okay? It doesn't matter. They're going to be there at the end of the day. Don't be surprised if that belt's going back to Hawaii, Luke. I'm telling you right now, okay? Well, tell your friends, tell your abuelo, okay? Please.
I will be surprised if the belt is on the way back to Hawaii, and it's not because I disagree necessarily with your assessment of who Max Holloway is here and how smart he is up here. I think all those things are true. I've spent more time examining the X's and O's of Max Holloway's career than I have any other fighter because I have that much of a high regard for it. He is special in all the ways that you say he is special. But the initial question I asked you was, should he have taken this fight? No, he should not have taken this fight. I think this was a mistake for him, to be quite honest with you. Now, does that mean he can't win?
You're falling for it, Luke. You're falling for it.
Hold on. Does that mean he can't win? Of course not. If you're as talented as Max Holloway, you can. The question is this the right strategic play? I do not think it is the right strategic play. It is a nice thing to say, you know, 9th island or 11th island or whatever number island we are on at this point, and it is what it is. And again, those are the reasons that we love Max. And he is, and I've said he's the first true ambidextrous fighter in UFC because he is, I would argue, some might disagree, but I would argue he's basically as good in either stance. It just he can function however he needs to depending on the particular puzzle that he's trying to solve. He can circle in either direction. Folks may not realize this, but he did opposite circling against Jose Aldo. First time he circled into his power hand, I think. Second time he went the other way. It totally confused the guy. I mean, it was amazing how he took that title and then demanded respect in the the featherweight division. But we keep talking about how much we like Max without saying I think what needs to be said here. We don't like Alexander Volkanovski enough. I do not think people are in touch with how talented he is. I do not think people understand how good his game is. I do not think that he gets enough appreciation. He is easily the most underappreciated champion in the UFC by both media and fans. They're just as guilty. Let me say something about this. In terms of his camouflage that he puts on what he does to confuse and conceal his striking, he's arguably the best in the UFC. He is on that level, he is on par with Adesanya, if not a little bit better. Okay? Now, that doesn't mean he's the hardest hitter. That doesn't mean that the totality of all the things he can do in striking are as well-rounded. But in terms of that cover, concealment, and camouflage, he's your apex predator. And the reason why he beat Max the first time is because Max stood there for about 23, 24 minutes and just didn't know what he was looking at. They could not get a beat on the guy, and he routinely landed on him. People keep saying, oh, it was the leg kicks. It is not the leg kicks. The leg kicks is merely a manifestation of all the confusion that he sowed in all of those little moments. Dude, no one has been able to even get close to figuring this guy out. They keep talking about that southpaw stance. All that did was take away the cover hand on the right side of Volkanovski. He still did pretty well no matter what. That is what he is up against. And here's my point. Here's my point. Hold on.
No, I want to ask you a question.
I'm not immune to the idea that Max can't figure that out. But it's only been 6 months. He didn't get to spar, and he had to train with his coaches on Zoom. Max can beat Volkanovski. I think it's a strategic mistake to do it, BC, under these circumstances.
Well, I will counter that just once by saying it's a bad situation for everybody. Like, life is turned upside down here. I know there's less cases in New Zealand and Australia if you spar more. I also think Max, by the way, is playing poker with us. But let me ask you this, Luke. Do you agree that Max did make an adjustment in 4 and 5, enough in that first fight to not only win those last 2 rounds pretty clearly, but show you that, again, we don't do 6 and 7 round fights, but had that been the case, he may have been able to turn that around?
No, I thought he won one of the 2. I thought he won, I can't remember if it was the 4th or the 5th. I'd have to go back and look. I did think he took one of those 2. But I also had a long conversation with the folks in Volkanovski's corner and what they saw. And then when I sort of interpreted what they saw and I rewatched it, that fight is not as close as people think that it is. It's just not. It wasn't that Max took some tremendous beating. Of course not. That is not the reality, no. But the question is, did he get a beat on what Alex was doing? Very little. And I don't think folks understand just how advanced Volkanovski is because we love Max so much, because, to your point, he has been so good. He's an ambassador for the game. Just before the show, BC, he announced that he was going to be auctioning off his fight kit afterwards because he was so humbled and impressed by Nurmagomedov, by Dustin Poirier. Dude, that's why we like Max Holloway, because he can fight his ass off. He obeyed COVID protocols when so many people wouldn't. And he's just a good guy in the game. There's just not that many, and we love him for that. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But listen, look at what Billy Joe Saunders said this week. We talk about boxing all the time. Now, he was partly complaining about money, BC, but what was his other complaint? He's like, dude, I can't train properly for this fight. I'm not going to take on Canelo. And he walked away from a Canelo fight. You can say whatever you want about how smart it is or not, but the reality is, dude, he's not going to go fight Canelo on some improper camp. I understand that. I completely understand that. Don't you?
I do. I just, again, if I'm going to believe partially that Max is playing poker, then I'm going to believe he's watching an insane amount of video from that first fight. And if I'm going to believe, Luke, which I do, that Max did make an adjustment there in the championship rounds to make that a close fight. I don't think he won. I had it 3-2 firmly for Volkanovski from cage side. But I think that he figured out the voodoo that he do in their early part of the fight. And now I ask you this, Luke. If we're going to believe that Max will have a better performance in the second fight than the first, if you believe that coming in, that he can see what he did wrong, see how he was disarmed, see how he can learn how to get off first, because Max is a master really of two things, right? Controlling distance and making you fight his fight, dictating the terms of it. Volkanovski was really one of the first guys that took that away from him. It wasn't like Volkanovski was just the heavier counterpuncher and he made him change his game. Volkanovski took the fight away from him, Luke. Can he do that for 10 rounds, A? And B, maybe more important, does Volkanovski have a plan B where he can trade with Max if he needs to on even terms? Not on hunt and peck, not on, you got to play my chess game and I'm going to come from, awkward foot angles and movements. Let's say Max does not have the same issues with the footwork, the timing, the angles that he did the first time, and this becomes more of a fight, Luke. I don't know how you can favor Volkanovski in the rematch.
If it becomes that, I think it's anybody's fight at that point. I wouldn't count Volkanovski out, but I would agree that would be a very different fight at that point. The only thing I will say that I think is probably good for Holloway is, to your point, he's taken a lot of damage recently, probably both in camp and then in those fights. I don't think it's ideal that he had no sparring, if that's in fact the reality. But what I can say is it probably is good to give his body a break. I think that has got to be true no matter what you think. So it's not, I think, a net positive, but I think that part is going to make him a little bit fresher for this contest, a little bit more dialed in. He's not going to walk in there all banged up and bruised. But I think this is just a thing we have to wrap our head around. If Max loses, dude, I don't know where he goes from here, right? If he wins, okay, all of this, forget. I'm wrong. I'll eat crow. I love Max. I don't want him to lose. I just don't think this was his optimal opportunity. But if he does, BC, is he going to go to 155? Now, maybe he can bulk up there and do it more properly, but it's not like he has tremendous firepower at 145. He's got good firepower, but against Dustin, he had overmatched, and now he'd have to go back there because he's not going to beat Volkanovski if you lose twice. It's risky, dude. You lose this one, you got to walk the plank a little bit.
That's a legit setback if he loses from which directions his career heading. And now there are big enough names in featherweight. I mean, good God, would you love him against, the Zombie or Ortega rematch? I mean, there's so many great fights you can make, but I agree with you on that. Would you be willing, though, on our 50th episode, Luke, to put something on the line here? I'm not talking about scratch. I know what's in your wallet, okay? I don't need it, all right? I'm talking about maybe, like, putting your eyebrows up. What are you going to put up against this for this fight?
Listen, okay? I mean, you want me to know which way I'm leaning? I lean Volkanovski for all the reasons aforementioned. I don't want to count Max out. This is the only thing that just bugs me. It makes me feel like I have to speak out and be like, Max is going to lose, and this is terrible, and the sky is falling. I just don't think it was smart to take this opportunity. The only thing that just sticks out to me, BC, the only thing I keep coming back to is everybody loves Max. You love Max. I love Max. People watching the show love Max. You can't be a real fight fan and say you don't like Max. The problem is I don't see enough of that same love extended to Volkanovski, either in terms of respect for his game or just being a father of two girls. Folks just don't. You got to put some respect on his name, y'all.
It's a shorter. Look, Luke, he's the new kid in town. I know. Look, he's got some great victories, but it's such a shorter amount compared to an all-time great in Max. Come on, Luke. Come on.
All right, fair enough. We'll have to see what happens.
In Texas, there is no bigger community activity than high school football.
Greg was one of the best players.
The momentum he had is unlike most students ever experience.
I got a text message with Greg Kelly's photo, and it just said, "Do you know this kid?"
There was a crime committed, according to this 4-year-old boy.
I just turned numb. Like, this can't be true, this can't be true.
And that's when a second victim came forward.
The jury found the defendant guilty.
This trial was a sham.
Everyone's saying you got the wrong guy.
Mr. Kelly has lied.
Did you take a lie detector test?
Passed every question but one.
We've been on this journey to figure out what the truth is, and it's proven difficult at every turn.
Initially, I was pretty convinced of his innocence. Now I wouldn't be surprised either way.